So, folks, I come to you today, a humble country streamer, bearing a gift of insanity, a gift of madness, a gift of delusion, or delulu sauce, as the kids are calling it these days. And it is in the form of a episode of Timcast IRL. And on this episode, he has as a guest Whatifalthist, who I think is just very funny. And also is, a far-right, just completely deluded individual, who does not understand politics. And there's also another guest who I've worked with in the past, NotSoErudite, who we actually did some canvassing together for Jamal Bowman. And, we don't agree on everything. She's a bit more liberal than I am. And I am a out-and-out socialist. So, take that with a grain, with whatever grains of salt you need, I guess. But we're going to jump into this episode. And we're going to see how much we can handle here. And already right off the bat, skipping through just some of the opening pleasantries here, I accidentally found the ideal frame to epitomize the energy of this particular episode. Jazz Dog, thank you for subscribing. But this is where we're at already. Second 0. Please let Moonlord have another banger outfit. I don't know if Moonlord has a banger outfit, but you are going to get some peak Moonlord moments throughout this, okay? And let's just let's just go. It's time. Lay it on us.
Who are you? What do you do?
I run the YouTube channel Whatifalthist and History 102.
And you discuss history.
I talk about history, anthropology, politics, and the intersection of all of those things.
Right on. Should be interesting. Kyla is back.
Hi.
And
you can find me NotSoErudite everywhere.
And you're what do you do?
I do political commentary, mostly debate.
She's here to yell at us because she's a lib.
Yes.
That's what she's doing. Of course, Phil and Ian are here, but we don't need introductions for the people you know and love. Let's jump to the news from Axios.com.
I'm sorry. I don't know.
Introductions for the people you know and love. Let's jump to...
I don't know who this guy is, but does he always dress like this? Like, we just saw, yesterday, another clip from the Tim Pool show here, and this guy was wearing the exact same thing. Like, I don't understand this aesthetic, but okay.
The news from Axios.com. We got James Comey subpoenaed in alleged grand conspiracy against Trump. Former FBI Director James Comey has been subpoenaed in the wide-ranging grand conspiracy case against the ex-officials who investigated and prosecuted President Trump. Two sources with knowledge of the situation tell Axios. The investigation has produced more than 130 subpoenas since cranking up last year. The officials, including Comey, have all decried the investigation as political persecution and lawfare. The Trump administration's grand conspiracy theory posits that Democratic officials bent the rules, broke the law, and lied under oath to investigate, prosecute, and otherwise undermine Trump from his election in 2016 through his federal indictments in 2023. The Comey subpoena issued last week relates to his alleged role in the drafting of a January 2017 intelligence community assessment concerning Russia's election interference that favored Trump. The assessment referenced the now widely discredited Steele dossier, whose inclusion ran counter to fundamental tradecraft principles and ultimately undermined the credibility of a key judgment, according to a tradecraft review completed in June under Trump's current CIA director, John Ratcliffe. Ratcliffe then referred Comey and former CIA Director John Brennan for prosecution. Well, all I can say, folks, is this proves it once and for all. It is now beyond a reasonable doubt, and we will just assert it as fact.
To be very clear here, the Russia collusion was demonstrated in the Mueller report. All right. It was never going to be like this silver bullet that a lot of people wanted it to be. Right. But people went to prison for lying in order to cover for Donald Trump. Like, there was specifically a lot of obstruction of justice involved in the investigation, specifically by different various Trump officials. And a lot of the waters were muddied by the fact that Attorney General, I believe Bill Barr at the time, put out a letter based on the report, basically downplaying the entire thing and muddying the waters, right? However, the actual report itself came to some conclusions that were pretty stark, specifically that collusion had happened, but that they weren't really able to conclusively prove that collusion had happened beyond a reasonable doubt. But that was in part because of so much obstruction of the investigation, right? For which people went to prison. So, like, it's frustrating for this to just constantly be parroted as if it's true, as if Donald Trump doesn't lie like he breathes. And in fact, like, again, these people all just take Donald Trump at face value. The lyingest president of all time.
Great.
It would be nice. It would be great if we could do something like that. But
we can.
I don't.
Well, it doesn't mean it's correct.
Well, we definitely shouldn't, because rule of law matters.
Until proven guilty. Comey, you're in.
This proves nothing. He's not been charged and convicted. It's not been litigated. Like, what? Well, yeah, exactly. Like, they're just... none of this actually proves anything here that they are trying to allege. It's crazy. On some Adam from Patrick Bet David shit. I mean, yeah. Also, did they have a poster for the shitty asylum movie, like with FDR, who, like, with machine guns in his wheelchair?
Innocent until we find out.
Well, if this was a stand,
is it FDR American Badass? Is that the name of the movie? Am I crazy here? FDR American Badass. Is that what it's called? Oh my! That is actually what it's called. They have a fucking poster for FDR American Badass. I can't, dog. How do you have a poster for FDR American Badass while simultaneously advocating against literally FDR's New Deal? I am in awe of, like, the mental dissonance on display just in that background prop design alone.
standard of due process, and like every single lawyer that we were talking about yesterday is like beyond guilty compared to Comey, right?
Agreed.
Like,
they're all guilty. Lock them all up.
lock them all up, right? But like obviously, like due process matters, and it's good that we have due process because it protects. As a liberal, I want due process so that when my side, but I don't really have a team, but when we want due process because we want to ensure that people who have vested interests against us can't weaponize systems, and I think that there's genuine concern that the DOJ is being weaponized against Trump enemies.
Yeah,
I think it was weaponized against Trump.
I think it's been
Sure, both of those.
I do, you know, there is something admirable about NotSoErudite entering this arena and just like trying to be this voice of reason in a room full of dumbasses. It's admirable. I applaud the effort. But Godspeed, Kyla. God.
Instances, if that was the case, if these are the
That's
case,
why
both of these things are bad.
I don't believe in due process anymore. Like it's like the tooth fairy to me now. Like you can say it exists.
I don't believe in due process? What are you talking about? We're like a minute in. Tim Pool throwing due process down the drain. If you don't have due process, you don't have legal rights. You don't have law. What are you talking about?
And we understand the concept. Like, yes, when I go to bed after my teeth fall out, hopefully not at 40 years old, that would suck. But I put it under my pillow and then money's there. Like something did happen. And then I'm told it was the tooth fairy. That's how I feel about due process, right? Something does happen most of the time, but when it actually matters, there's no due process because the left makes the same exact argument I'm making now. You've got that dude in California who raped that one chick and they said he had that's what it is? Affluenza from raping that chick?
Yeah.
So he didn't...
Tim Pool, noted guy who cares about rapes. You know, especially rapes of that chick. God, that's such a disgusting turn of phrase to use too.
There was no functional due
He
process
was too
there.
rich to know what he was doing wrong.
The
He didn't
affluenza
realize
case.
it.
spoiled
I'm
into
not
being.
familiar with
It's
that.
crazy. They
So
so
he,
like
like-
affluenza.
Yeah, they said he suffered from affluenza because he was too rich to understand what he did was wrong. So that's from the left. The left has made that argument. I think it's fair to say both the left and the right agree that the legal system is just a function of who wants to exercise power against their enemies.
I think that these
Is
going
this
behind
the
the
Ethan
backs,
Couch case?
Yes.
going
what it was?
behind of the backs of people and like spying on opponents has been the norm.
Also, if they're talking about the affluenza teen, that kid didn't do a rape. He did a DUI that killed 4 people. What?
Through history, even though they will tell you we have due process. And I'm wondering, Rudyard, I really want to get your take on this because since the internet feels like people like Donald Trump actually have a chance at bucking the system, did this kind of thing ever happen in the past?
So I have a few different takes here. The first of which is we have to be very careful about eroding rule of law because that's been
We have to be very careful about eroding rule of law, which is another way to say Tim Pool's full of shit.
the English-speaking world's great advantage. And if we erode rule of law, it's going
I'm sorry. The English-speaking world's great advantage is rule of law. My guy, other countries also have laws. What are you talking about? This idea that like other countries just don't have laws. The other countries of the world, they just haven't discovered laws yet, guys.
to have very negative downstream effects on everything between the economy, between politics, because rule of law is the set of rules you use to establish all social interaction. And if that goes away, you won't make companies because someone will steal the company you make. But I have another thing. The second thing is the left has been weaponizing this already, and there's been a huge issue with conservative judges and with conservatives making the argument that you're opposed to, saying, oh, we can't do this, blank, blank, blank. The left has already done a weaponization of the political process to an insane degree. And when conservatives push...
The left has done a weaponization of the political process, i.e. passed laws that judges have to enforce. Yes, that is how laws work. Laws get passed by legislators and then have to be enforced by the judicial system. That is how that works. Yep. When your argument against the current system is that one political party passes laws, that's a pretty bad argument.
against stuff where it should be illegal to discriminate against white men under civil rights law. It happens.
It is illegal to discriminate against white men under civil rights law. That is illegal, actually. What do you... Oh, man. Oh, boy. All right.
On a mass degree, but conservative judges don't stand against it. Conservative judges don't stand against the...
It happens to a mass degree. Citation needed.
Rampant abuse in the family court system against men. They don't stand against the rampant biases.
Citation needed. The rampant bias against men in the family court system. I wonder if maybe there might be certain statistics that might demonstrate why that bias exists in the findings of the family court system. I wonder historically why those findings might be biased when a family has to go to family court. I wonder if perhaps in the structure of patriarchy, there might be a reason for that. Or several reasons for that. I don't know.
Against white men, where the left has been doing this to an insane degree, and even defensively, the right does not protect itself.
Well, so to your point about how we want to keep the rule of law, I would agree, but when it's gone, it's gone. Right?
I mean,
Indeed, depraved ambiance. The bias in family court is skewed because it counts the default judgments when the men don't sue for custody because, hey, guess what happens when men skip out on their families? It turns out that legal judgments are required in order to actually, have some kind of judgment that doesn't leave a mom, a single mom, destitute with her child. Just a thought to have there.
I want to keep my car nice and clean, but if a bunch of vandals come and smash it with crowbars, there's nothing I can do about it.
So
I get it fixed.
To point on the couch.
What? This is one of my favorite things that Tim Pool does, where he tries to come up with an analogy that's just terrible. Well, I try to keep my car clean, but if vandals come and smash my car, there's nothing I can do about it. I mean, I guess, but that's not at all analogous to the situation here, Tim.
Thing you guys were talking about. He wasn't under affluenza. He was under the influence of intoxication, Ethan Couch.
No. The argument was that he shouldn't get the harshest penalty because he had quote unquote affluenza.
That's the argument his lawyers made. His lawyers made up the term to say that he was mentally incompetent to be held responsible for a DUI because there's no way he could have known that there would be legal and material consequences to driving while intoxicated because of how rich he was.
It's a nonsense term that meant he was so rich he didn't understand right from wrong.
Yeah.
So he did actually end up getting charged. He
did.
Yeah, he had 10 years
And the argument was that he
probation.
shouldn't get the harshest of penalties for what he did. Yeah. Wasn't it like there was a passed out woman and he was raping her and then some guys caught her or something?
Yeah. No. This guy was in a car accident going 70 miles per hour in a 40 mile per hour zone.
Yeah. This was like a Me Too
but
era.
This isn't the left, right? This is his defense attorney argued this.
The left was upset that he did not go to prison in the most harshest of penalties because the court system failed us.
Sure, yeah. I don't know. First of all, he's from Texas. Well, he's from Texas, not California, so the left narrative isn't working here. But also in this case, he was intoxicated and under the influence of drugs, and
Nobody
he hit
disagrees.
people. Yeah, which is all bad, right?
Agreed.
But I think it's
progressives were upset at the time of this case because they wanted a very harsh penalty against him. The judge gave him a light sentence, citing what she called affluenza.
I see his defense attorney citing affluenza. I can't find the judge citing that as the reason why she gave him. But 10 years probation is
neither here nor there. I mean, it's an old story we were lightly referencing where people on the progressives were upset about it.
I'm sorry. Is the weird breathing noise? Is that you're all hearing that too, right? Is Rudyard just like heavy breathing into the mic? This is it's so uncomfortable.
To the point back to story we were lightly referencing where people on the progressives were upset about it. To the point back to Rudyard, like I was saying, like I have a nice car, I try to protect it, right? I'll park it in my garage. Then one day while I'm sleeping, a bunch of whoever Antifa comes and firebombs the garage. It's gone. So you talk about the rule of law and we want to maintain it, but at the same time you say that the left has been.
I'm so sorry. I need to hear that analogy again. That was insane.
Like I was saying, like I have a nice car, I try to protect it, right? I'll park it in my garage. Then one day while I'm sleeping, a bunch of, whoever Antifa comes and firebombs the garage. It's gone. So you talk about the rule of law and we want to maintain it, but
okay, and what? In any world, the people who did that would get caught and go to prison under the legal system. Tim, what the fuck are you talking about? Antifa could just show up and firebomb your house and there's nothing you could do about it anymore is one of the most insane arguments I've ever heard in my life.
At the same time, you say that the left has been destroying it and eroding it. I mean, at a certain point, they've destroyed it.
Yeah, you oftentimes have to balance two opposing things and figure out where between these two is the reasonable conclusion. And I understand what you're saying where, Russiagate was a lie, and it's crazy there's been no prosecution for this staggering lie because
it's not a lie. They found evidence for it. They just weren't able to prove conclusively the collusion because multiple people lied to protect Trump and then went to jail for it.
There was no actual evidence that Trump was colluding with Russia or that the Russians tilted the course of the election. This was just a story the left made up. And slander is incorrect, especially slander on that scale. And you can't let that go back. And I think another thing is we have laws against treason, and we have seen mass treason among the population. And I would need to I'm not a lawyer.
Well, do you mean like codified legal treason? Which I would say this. The actual law is when you're providing material resources to an enemy at a time of war, or aid and comfort, or whatever. It's specific. Sedition.
Like, I'm sorry here, but you can go and read the Mueller report. It's public record. The conclusion of the report is that there was, in fact, wide-scale interference in the 2016 presidential election in a sweeping and systematic fashion. That is a direct quote. Now, what they needed to also prove, beyond the reasonable doubt, was a collusion between that Russian interference and the Trump campaign. The people who would have been able to prove that obstructed them and denied them information that would have been necessary to actually prove collusion. It's why Mike Flynn went to jail.
Is general undermining of the government in the United States.
Yes.
And there is treason. Because this happened when Trump said this is like, sedition punishable by death. That is when the military seeks.
Like, come on. Whoa. It's not treason. It's sedition, says Tim Pool, beginning to sweat underneath his beanie, afraid of another Laura Loomer situation where they have to suddenly cut the feed.
To undermine. So there is a special sedition there. I would argue that many of the people you may be referring to, you could perhaps argue treason because they are adherent to, say, China or whatever. But we aren't at war with China despite being adversaries. Iran now is where it gets interesting because you've got a lot of people that are accusing Tucker Carlson of treason directly for communicating with Iran before the U.S., as the U.S. was preparing strikes against them. But as I would say for the general leftist, it's seditious conspiracy.
You're correct. I got the words wrong. What I'd say in general is there's been a complete and utter abuse of the rule of law.
To be very clear here, wait, what happened with Laura Loomer? Oh, it was very funny. Laura Loomer was trying to advocate for enemies of Donald Trump to be executed. And Tim Pool cut the feed suddenly to prevent her from saying on his show and getting him demonetized that, like, to prevent her from broadcasting that Trump's enemies should be killed, essentially, on his program. He did not want that smoke. And in a similar way, that's why Tim Pool jumps in here to be like, whoa, it's just sedition, guys. Also, just looking at this here, the Mueller report writes that the investigation identified numerous links between the Russian government and the Trump campaign, found that Russia perceived it would benefit from the Trump presidency, and that the 2016 Trump presidential campaign expected it would benefit electorally from Russian hacking efforts. However, ultimately, the investigation did not establish that members of the Trump campaign conspired or coordinated with the Russian government in its election interference activities. Caveat here, the evidence was not necessarily complete due to encrypted, deleted, or unsaved communications, as well as false, incomplete, or declined testimony. This is not saying that there was no coordination between these two forces. It's just to say they weren't able to obtain that evidence, which is, in fact, I would argue, a different thing than it didn't happen at all. In fact, the second volume of the report is entirely dedicated to how the Trump campaign and Trump allies obstructed justice in the investigation. So, I don't know. Seems weird to obstruct the investigation there on that one if there was absolutely no truth or merit to the claims.
So far. And it's been done predominantly by the left across a variety of different fields, with everything stretching from the national level to the social level to the family level. And this has been justified.
Oh my God, he's so insane. Okay.
Correct. I got the words wrong. What I'd say in general is there's been a complete and utter abuse of the rule of law so far. And it's been done predominantly by the left across a variety of different fields, with everything stretching from the national level to the social level to the family level.
The left has abused the law on every level of society. The left abused the law on the national level, and the state level, and the local level, and the family level. Think of the poor nuclear families.
And this has been justified by the court system. And so you have to be careful that if you remove the institution of law, we're going to devolve into being a third world dictatorship.
Can I just say, I love the idea that these guys have, that despite the fact that Donald Trump controls the House and the Senate and the presidency and the Supreme Court, somehow the left is still insidiously orchestrating everything that is wrong in the world and manipulating the courts on a scale completely unimaginable. Like, the left is so insidious that they control everything, even when we control the courts and the presidency and Congress. Like, the world they live in is so skewed. It does not share similarities with the real world.
We are, right? So Trump won the popular vote. He got a plurality with, I think it was like 49.8%. The American people expect something to be done. But he's being obstructed by judges every step of the way, and then there's this tit-for-tat back and forth where...
Now judges are obstructing the law by obstructing the president, because as we all know, the president and the law are the same thing. I am very intelligent.
Goes to like 3 appeals, and then finally he wins. There was a recent ruling with RFK Jr. where he wanted to change the rules on vaccine safety, and then once again a judge blocked him. And you famously have this judge in D.C. that just says literally no to everything. There was that particularly important court case where these judges were...
Yeah, it couldn't be that they might have reasons that they explained for doing these things. As we all know, judges simply go yes or no and don't issue lengthy justifications for their decisions. But, if we acknowledge that, then we'd have to acknowledge that you have to get into the reasons being provided by the judge for supporting or denying specific motions.
Arguing that any district, actually it was the left was arguing that any district court judge can overturn anything Trump does.
That is literally how our legal system has worked up until now. That is, in fact, the status quo. That is... Like, don't these guys ever sit and think, like, hey, I wonder what stopped Biden from, say, I don't know, granting student debt relief? Hey, what stopped Obama and Biden from doing so many different things? I thought, they were gay communist leaders. They were gonna bring in the anarcho-gay communism. What stopped them from doing that? They never go back and re-examine that with this same lens in mind, Because again, part of what stopped Biden in so many different cases were conservative judges who ruled against his more progressive policies that he tried to implement.
And then the Trump administration argued this is insane because at the time they had an appeal granted allowing this immigration practice. I forgot the specific executive order. As soon as it was granted, progressive groups filed a lawsuit in another federal jurisdiction, which put a stay on it.
Yeah. Now, I know this might be a little hard for Tim to wrap his beanie around, but it turns out, I don't know if you guys know this, a federal law can be challenged in multiple federal districts because it turns out different people live in different districts and might encounter that federal law in different capacities. It's not difficult to figure out here, guys.
So they can't both be true at the same time. I think it's fair to say that while I agree with you, the left is absolutely just saying by any means necessary, and the right is saying slow down their Democrats.
The left is breaking rule of law. What they're doing is not justifiable and it's not fair.
The left is breaking rule of law. Meanwhile, ICE has been arresting undocumented immigrants outside their court hearings for the last year and a half based on a bullshit memo that they based all of their legal arguments on and just had to present to the court, actually this key component, the only justification for this policy was actually bullshit the entire time. Oops, sorry, please don't get mad at us, judges.
And the English common law was established in the 12th century under a certain context with a certain aim in charge. And this was not the end point of the context or the aim that we were trying to reach. And you have to parallel the left for where they're at. And it's quite, I'm trying to articulate something complicated where in crisis periods like this, you set precedents that you can't go back. And so if you compare the English Civil War to the French Revolution, in the English Civil War, you had a political crisis, and at the end of it, England became a democracy with rule of law, and in France, it spiraled into being a military dictatorship.
Yeah, because famously, Europe didn't have any kind of unified legal system. Famously, France has no laws. Only the UK has laws. If you go to France, it's anarchy over there. It's Mad Max. That's what they call it. Mad Max France. Mad France. France Max. I don't know. We'll workshop a name for it over there, but it's just crazy anarcho-capitalists ruling a wasteland. Meanwhile, you go over to the UK with its rule of law, and there you have real history. Like it's Le Mad Max. Italy is all pasta-based bargaining. Exactly. It's not like I don't know, the Carolingian Empire didn't have recognized different legal avenues. It'd be really cool if we could recognize that there's like a cool and rich history to Europe, and different areas of Europe have different cultural and historical roots that go back 1,000 years, or 2,000 years, even 3,000 years in some cases. Like the idea that the West is like one homogenous block has always been so offensive to me, right? Because all of these areas, all of the current countries, all of the different groups of people that live in Europe, like their legal systems are cool and interesting too. Like they derive from different origins than English common law. Like when looking at like the legal system of like the Carolingian Empire, for example, which was one of the interim empires that like bridged the formalization of many European states and the fall of the Roman Empire. Like they had a pluralistic legal system, meaning different areas of the empire had different legal codes. Isn't that cool? Isn't that interesting? Isn't it wild that like this large, pretty interesting empire, really. I encourage you guys to do some reading about the Carolingian Empire. But this large mass of coordinated society managed to sustain several different legal systems all at once while unifying this area via a complicated and complex bureaucracy. And we have a lot of evidence from that particular period of time. In Rudyard's mind, it's just, well, English common law, that was the good shit, because they spoke English. They spoke American, so, the English were okay. It's really fucking stupid when you boil it down.
And these are very different outcomes, and you have to be careful about not establishing
Oui, Monsieur Max. Witness me!
precedents that future generations can look to. Because if you go to Latin America, there's a lot of countries in Latin America, like Argentina, Argentina's more white than America. It has a temperate climate. And Argentina...
It's really interesting that of all the qualities one could talk about with a country, Rudyard lists whiteness as the number one quality that he's concerned with when it comes to Argentina.
Argentina's poor because they don't have rule of law, where if you can't establish a company and assume that a social superior is not going to steal your company, you can't have a capitalist economy.
So let me ask you this question. What is wrong with a military dictatorship?
Oh boy. Okay. All right. Don't worry, guys. We've got our top man on it.
I am the intellectual equivalent of an assault rifle.
So there's multiple tiers. 95+% of regimes in history are authoritarian, and authoritarian is one strong man on top who runs everything. There's tiers, though, where some of them are enlightened, and when you look at authors like Aristotle, they were talking about the benefits of monarchy, and I'm not a monarchist, but monarchy is you have a long-term incentive for the leader to care about the population, and that works a lot better than...
I'm sorry, that is not, in fact, accurate to what monarchs didn't give a shit about the long-term incentives of anything. It's why they argued that their will was that of God. Like, they were delusional.
Something like the Soviet Union.
Well, I wanted to ask you specifically about what you mentioned what's going on today. You compared that to, say, the British or the French. So my question is more so, what would be bad about the United States becoming a military dictatorship?
Yeah, I don't know, Tim. What would be bad about it? I really want someone to play the dumb foil to Tim Pool. Tim Pool is in desperate need of a rubber, and don't clip that out of context, okay? Tim Pool is in desperate need for a rubber to his glue, okay? Like, someone just needs to be like, I don't know, Tim, what would be bad about America being a dictatorship? As if he's the dumbest person in the room, and then watch him, like, struggle with that answer.
The military would be, you could have a situation where the military is corrupt, it shuts down capitalism, it shuts down freedom.
Yes, the number one bad thing about a military dictatorship would be a potential threat to the free market, of course.
Shuts down the functioning of a society, and the good things we take for granted die, and those things...
He needs a straight man. He needs a straight man with a sense of comedic timing. Just someone to make him look like a big buffoon for even asking the question.
They're fundamentally dependent on freedom.
What if a military dictatorship emerged in the United States that was based entirely upon traditional American conservatism, and the military by force said, we're not going to allow leftism anymore, we're not going to allow the courts to supersede the will of the people, and they just, through military rigidity, enforced the right cultural worldview?
That's why I said there's a huge Overton window for authoritarianism, because you're trusting the leader a lot. If you looked at Emperor Augustus, who was the first Roman dictator, he was one of the greatest statesmen in history. So when Rome did the transition from democracy to monarchy, they had one of the best rulers ever. And things governed very well until Tiberius and Caligula showed up, and then it got a lot worse. And with monarchies or authoritarianism...
Famously, the only problem with the Roman Empire was Tiberius and Caligula. 100%. Don't worry about anything else. No, guys, don't look into it. How dare you?
You're trusting and the reason that a lot of the older authors preferred monarchies to military dictatorships is that the monarch has an incentive to pass things on to their children. So the monarch has a multi-generational incentive.
Yeah, unlike warlords, and I guess what a military dictatorship would have been considered in the past. Yeah, famously, those warlords had no incentive to pass along their power to their sons or their offspring. Only monarchs had that ability.
So they're less likely to hurt things like freedom or the free market. Because
the monarchs who own serfs are less likely to hurt things like freedom. I'm getting stupider by the second. This is genuinely what breathing in too much CO2 is like.
Put rule of law above democracy, because if you're a society with rule of law, it means you have functional freedom. It means you have you can have capitalism. Because keep in mind.
So, but let me ask you. How would you feel if there was a military dictatorship that enforced the things you wanted to exist?
Everyone wants the things they forced. Everyone wants the things that they believe to be enforced.
So would you be happy if Donald Trump became a supreme dictator and used the military to enforce laws, but it was everything you wanted in society?
I would not be happy with that. What I will say is that the reason...
Why not? You just argued that everyone wants that.
You could not have Timcast in any other Western country.
I know I'm being real pause champ right now, guys. You could not have Timcast in any other country? If you tried that shit in Iceland, they'd have you on ice. Yeah, like I was doing a meme. The kids do it. The idea here that like you can't do this show anywhere else. I mean, I guess unless you're like just a gigantic baby and like I don't know, like you don't want to get insulted in like various accents, baby. I guess. Yeah, that's fair. He'd be brutally mocked here. To be fair, we brutally mocked Tim Pool here as well, but clearly we need to do it more.
Because they've had left-wing authoritarianism remove the rule of law and personal freedoms, where once you start pulling that away...
I might have missed the lesson where we learned that the Roman Empire was a capitalist utopia. Well, it's very simple, okay? The Roman Empire had two main exports, bread and circuses. And don't look anything into that. Don't look into it. Capitalist utopia built entirely on bread and circuses, okay? The only two exports they had.
You very quickly end up in a society where you lose a lot. And it's one of those things where I put property rights and rule of law above everything else in my framework.
But so I guess my ultimate point is, when you look at the history of the United States, there are varying degrees of cultural enforcement across the board. Obviously not military dictatorship, but until you get to Abraham Lincoln, I suppose, when things got pretty serious with the Civil War. But blasphemy, for instance, was illegal up until like the early 1800s. My view largely is that if everybody in this country was morally homogenous, they'd be completely happy. Like let's say everybody in this country, 100.
I'm sorry. America has never been morally homogenous. No group of people is morally homogenous, really? I mean, I guess it'd be relatively homogenous, but like even so, like there's diversity of moral thought in family units, in friend groups. I mean, I guess maybe not in Tim Pool's friend group, but like just kind of seems like he's reaching for straws here. Oh boy.
100% of people were Christian theocrats. They'd have no problem with a member of Congress proposing a bill of a commandment law.
But Christian...
Yeah, famously, Christians never had a problem with other Christians. No. The West has always been united and pro-Christianity, very much dependent on what kind of Christianity you're talking about. Don't look at the age of the warring German city-states. Don't look at that. Don't look into any kind of church schism. Stop it. Stop Googling. Stop it. Don't look into that. Don't look into the wars between Protestants and Catholics. Stop it. I wonder how they'd explain the IRA.
Theocracies.
Well, let's be clear, WPG Squirrel. In their minds, colonized people don't exist. So that includes the Irish.
Fell at the hands oftentimes of Christianity, because the idea that people will stay like wholly like unified in the perfect way insofar as that people will be happy just doesn't happen, right?
Agreed.
Because people...
Thank you.
Like the United States today used to be morally homogenous to a great degree, and then it started fracturing. I would argue that...
Oh God, he's just breathing into the mic. It's awful. It is awful.
Since the Civil War, like the bifurcation actually started around the time the country was formed, because Thomas Jefferson wanted to actually complain about slavery in the Declaration of Independence, but they were concerned that South Carolina and Georgia would not join the effort if they included that grievance.
The king, yeah.
He also didn't want to give up his own slaves.
Yeah.
And so there was a general bit of, let's call it acrimony, but it started to bubble up in the 1820s when there was a perception in the 1820s that a civil war could actually happen in the United States, though it didn't.
Yeah, famously a nation of immigrants founded upon different religious diaspora, very morally homogenous.
And then it did happen, in 1861. Since then, you've had this clash between two polarized worldviews in this country. My point ultimately is, if you have a group of people that believe the exact same thing, the things they argue about are the minutia. You know, in the 90s,
kill over the minutia, though, right?
Sure, and it can spin wild out of control. But in the 90s, Democrats and Republicans lived together, got married, and their arguments were over like how much in taxes versus like how long a woman should be allowed to have an abortion. And it was like the Republicans were like, I think 16 weeks is too long.
I mean, what you're describing is just a neoliberal shift in the ruling parties, right? Because the distance between the two parties at the time was not that great. Like, during this time period, the Democrats shifted into neoliberal mode. It's how you get Bill Clinton. And like, the other part of it here is like, Tim is only describing a very small group of people. It's the same way people like hold up the 50s as like this, everyone had a car and a house and a wife and 3 beautiful children, and somehow they made it work. Everything was Leave It to Beaver. And like, that was only true for a small subset of the middle class in America. That was not true for remotely everybody, in the same sense that like, whoa, the situation he's describing about the 90s, not true for most people.
And Democrats are like, it's got to be 18 weeks.
That was just the political. That was the political Overton window, though. There were still these ideas.
I guess what I'm saying is that when you look at the moral worldview of Democrats and Republicans, the majority of the country in like 1994, they overwhelmingly overlapped, and so they were pretty okay with like, I mean, like, certainly we had protests for the Iraq and Afghanistan war, but still.
I left it to Beaver, and now there's a lake where I live. Things didn't go as planned. The ultimate wombat, welcome. Also, folks, since I'm already paused, if you're enjoying the show, hit that follow button, hit that subscribe button. And folks, please consider supporting the show with subs, donos, memberships, super chats, etc. We are still going towards our goal. Every $5, every membership or paid sub gets us closer to this goal. So please consider supporting the show. Isn't the woman on the panel a Destiny orbiter? I think that she distanced herself from Destiny. I'm not sure. But I do think in the past she might have been on some of his shows. I'm not super familiar with her content. I just canvassed with her one time in the past and worked with her for with Progressive Victory for canvassing efforts.
People generally were like, well, you know, 9/11, right? They rallied around George W. Bush even after 2000. Ultimately, my point is this. Just to
Oh, Brutus Magnuson says she isn't the Destiny orbiter. There we go.
Simplify. No one would care about a military dictatorship that was enforcing exactly what their worldview was. Only.
I would care. I would care if I lived in a military dictatorship enforcing only the things I like, because I believe fundamentally that democracy is superior to military dictatorship. And I think even if a military dictatorship did all of the things I wanted it to do, well, if one did, it would no longer be a military dictatorship. I actually don't think that a military dictatorship would be good or beneficial. And hey, kind of seems like that I just kind of oppose them on principle. Weird how that works.
The dissenters would. So
I would
if you
say
had
fools only don't care about that. I would
everyone is a fool.
Well, no. I don't think everyone's a fool. I think like the one of the things that I love about like America and like American tradition, like Greek philosophy, is that like we're built on a tradition of people thinking beyond just their own skin and preferences. This is why you're probably familiar with Rawls and like the veil of ignorance, right? It's this great kind of political philosophy where it says you should imagine a world where you can't know what body, gender, etc. you'll be born into.
This literally sounds like an argument against universal enfranchisement, because
oh my god, what? Everyone on here is stupid. Everyone on here is stupid. It's so. Oh no, dog, you didn't understand what she said.
this great kind of political philosophy where it says you should imagine a world where you can't know what body, gender, etc. you'll be born into.
This
what society do you want?
This literally sounds like an argument against universal enfranchisement, because the average person doesn't conceive of the world like that.
That's because you're an authoritarian pig dog. Like that's because you have like this fucking like hierarchical idea of what society should be. This idea that you need a fucking great leader to tell you what to do, when to sit, when to shit, when to eat. Like that's your mentality. It's not an argument against universal suffrage. It's an argument. It's an argument for that. It's literally the exact opposite of what you just described, my man. It's an argument that everyone deserves the right to like shape society and participate in its governance. And like, because you don't know when you get born, what you're going to turn out as. And if you sit down and think about that logically, what would be the fairest outcome? What would be the fairest society? We look at it and then we do that because everyone deserves an equal shot in the world. You know, everyone deserves a fair shake. The idea that you don't deserve a fair shake on the basis of your skin color or like the basis of the place on the planet you happen to come out of a vagina in, like that's bad. That's weird. We should seek to end a world that arbitrarily puts limits on human beings and instead embrace a world where anyone can rise and like make the world a better place. I don't know, it just seems pretty logical to me, and they just don't understand it at all.
As much as you're like, this is what it ought to be, and I agree, this is not the reality of the world that we live in.
So I agree that it's not the reality of the world we live in to some degree, but I think that like
to a large degree.
Well, sure, and I think that that's a sad thing. I think the fact that we've like lost the connection to the things that matter beyond just our own skin, that we've failed to understand that principles matter fundamentally and deeply, and to hold to these principles, to understand why we said everyone has to be equal before the law, even if I hate that guy, and why that matters is a failing of our society, and it doesn't matter what side.
But don't we have to deal with the world as it is? We have to meet the population and meet the world where it is. We can't be like, well, you know, it should be this and it should be that.
There's this.
I don't understand the idea that like we could make the world better. I don't get that. How do you explain that? Is that not an argument against your position? Like, oh my God. Oh no. Oh God. Like, I don't know. Like, he brings up that he thinks the average person is too stupid to be allowed to vote, right? But in his mind, the solution to that is authoritarianism instead of improving the education system, you know? Like, instead of like improving the education system so everyone can achieve, everyone has honed mental skills, etc., has the ability to be media literate. Instead of that, he's just like, no, you don't understand. We have to just educate one guy and then he can tell all the rest of us simpletons what to do. It's crazy.
Saying in psychology where we say if you meet people if your expectations for people are exactly where they are, all they'll do is be exactly what they are. Whereas if you look at people and you say, I know you can do better. I know that we can collect and do and unify. They might not get up here, but they're probably going to get here.
Well, let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question, right? Like, murder is wrong, obviously. We all agree.
Generally, except for like self-defense, blah, blah, blah.
Well, so that's not murder.
What if people can't come together and be better than what they are? Says man who lives in a country of 300 billion people that put men on the moon. Like, are you kidding me? You're like, no. Human beings are too stupid to better themselves, says man benefiting from thousands of years of technological advancement. Like it's genuinely some of the dumbest shit I've ever seen from these people, and they just spew it on the regular and their audience eats it up. It's crazy to me. Fun fact, it is that craziness is in fact why I now have a channel where I make content, because I watched a Tim Pool video and I said, this was really boring and stupid, and I could make interesting and not stupid content. And here I am. Like, comment, and subscribe.
Self-defense isn't murder. Murder is the intentional killing of another person without warrant.
Okay.
And so, if you walked up to a person...
It's true. Okay, wait, it's true. There is no better clip that demonstrates the conservative desire, the burning conservative desire for an authoritarian leader, more so than this clip from Vermin Supreme.
You love President Trump? More than life itself. What? If I could suck his cock, like a old kid. Will you suck Trump's cock? Yeah!
Suck Trump's cock! 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 Suck Trump's.
Yeah, so this is one of those things where a guy in a tall hat comes along and starts authoritatively speaking, and suddenly all of them just copy him and fall in line. It's genuinely wild to watch. So exactly what we're talking about here on the Tim Pool cast.
And just shot them and they died. We'd find it to be...
Jack, that's a boot. When you put a boot on your head, it becomes a hat.
Murder. And Rudyard, this is for you too. Let's say that you live in a small village in the countryside, and the year is 1300, whatever, and you're French, so you're all like white, brown hair.
Oh, okay. Okay, so we're French. It's the 1300s, so clearly it's a Mad Max lawless zone. Anything could happen. Okay.
Blue-eyed people or whatever. Whatever they looked like in France, and they're sitting there going ha 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 and inventing croissants. And then you get people who are clearly distinct from you, and they show up and you say, well, we don't just kill people, we're a little apprehensive. And then you meet and you talk, and the guy pulls a knife and just stabs your village elder to death, and then throws fire in your village and then flees.
Sounds like the Romans.
So then the next day a similar person shows up. Do you just say, no, we must stand by our principles, we do not attack, we do not or when a similar person shows up in the same garb, with the same physical appearance, carrying a torch, do you say one more move and you die?
I would say that
Tim Pool here trying to make an argument for racial discrimination is genuinely insane to me. Like, it's not difficult to be like, oh, a guy shows up looking a bit different, but who looks similar to like the guy who just did a crime. But we know it's not the same guy, so why on earth would we attack him? Obviously, you would take security measures to not just put your village elder in front of this guy who looks the same that you know nothing about. But hey, maybe you should have done that previously. Maybe this is just a good policy where we don't just introduce every newcomer to the most important person in our village. Maybe, I don't know. We if we're worried about a repeat offense of killing our leadership and burning down the center of the village, maybe you build a wall and just hey, ask the people coming in, say, hey, what are your intentions here? You're gonna be trading? And then you realize over time the only situation in which that wall is actually useful to you, as it begins to crumble and you need to keep it up, the only situation it's useful to you in is when an entire army shows up and is trying to assault you and invade you and destroy your country. Now, what happens here is that Tim Pool is trying to argue that this is actually, in fact, what's happening to America. There's an invading army that's trying to destroy America. His version of invading and destroying isn't coming in and slaughtering the entire leadership of America and then installing one of their dipshit guys to rule the country. His version is people who look different than us come here, pay their taxes, have children, have families, have lives, and the country's a little bit less white because some of those people happen to not be white. That's his issue here, right? The analogy he's trying to make is just not a good one for this situation. Obviously people should be treated equally under the law. It's so frustrating, and it's so easy to understand this. Like, obviously you don't just stab strangers to death because they look the same as the other guy. Tim wouldn't do that in real life. He wouldn't be like, I just got mugged by a guy, time to, like, shoot at, like, a person who looks like the guy who tried to mug me. Like, you don't... That's not how that works, actually.
Both of these
What does Jack's shirt say? Release energy.
Philosophies were silly to begin with. I don't think that the philosophy of like generosity means naivete.
I didn't ask you. I asked you a specific scenario to tell me what you thought.
I'm telling you why the scenario already is flawed. I think that the principle that they had initially probably was uninformed.
Every time she talks, he starts heavy breathing. It's so weird.
And uncomplex, and it does have to be
don't
updated.
Breed outsiders,
but it doesn't have to be updated to an extreme opposite side, which is often what people do. They go from one side and then they swap to the other side. And the reality is that the truth is a lot more times in the middle of what is a proper dialectic of wisdom.
So let's just back to the question. Your proposition then is the village should not allow anyone to peacefully greet them out of fear that there could be an act of violence against them.
No, of course not. How would you take that away from what I just said?
You said that you said the initial response they had was probably flawed.
Right, but I said don't just do the opposite also, which is...
Because it might be a defector that's
if a guy throws a torch at your village and burns on your house and kills one of your people and then flees, and then a person who looks just like him, wearing the same clothes, the same flag, whatever, shows up the next day, do you treat him the same, or do you adapt your...
I'm sorry. The Rudyard breathing is so distracting that I'm having trouble hearing his argument.
You should adapt, but my caution to people is that when they think adapt, they want to go to the opposite extreme end. When in reality, oftentimes wisdom falls between the middle of two dialectics.
Sure. So just, what do you do?
I would probably be cautious, probably have arms and weapons ready in case he whips out his torch to start stabbing and murdering. And
you just have, you update your laws and have everyone treated equally under that law. You don't update your laws and policies to be discriminate like that, to discriminate against different groups of people. You just have a consistent set of laws. That's it. That full stop. It's not a difficult problem here.
Burning things, right? But inquire him, ask why he's there, see what his intention is in the village, right? You could even treat him cautiously, say he gives you all of the perfect answers that makes you go like, oh, he's actually a defector from that village and he's got info.
Okay. What if he throws a torch at your village and burns another building down and runs?
Well, hopefully you've got guys ready and he's far enough away that when you greet him,
He does. And then the next day, a similar looking guy in the same clothes shows up with a torch. Do you shoot him with an arrow?
No.
You let him throw the torch again?
No, you do neither, right?
You do neither?
Well, yeah, like,
I guess
why are you being black and white on this? Like, the reality is that, like, wisdom...
I'm just giving you a simple scenario, like...
I'm just giving you a simple, casual, everyday scenario, okay? It's not tortured at all. It's a very, very common scenario. Man shows up in your village with a torch, and you need to decide whether you kill him on sight or not. Obviously, you just never... That's the scenario. Do it. Do you kill him? Do you shoot? Say you're in a very common scenario. You're walking down the street and you see a man with a vest covered in dynamite with a timer ticking down. And it looks like he has his finger on the button. Do you take the shot? Do you take the shot? Like, this is wild. What are you talking about? How is this your go-to ask?
Sure, and I'm answering the
scenario that has happened over and over again in this
country. I agree, and I'm saying the scenario of human nature is to go to black and white thinking immediately. And what I'm saying to people is that black and white thinking is just as destructive. What if that next guy showing up with the torch is just about to show up and bring blacksmith and like ironworks to your village and like revolutionize your technology?
I'm going to answer both of you. I said that I liked freedom and property rights, and I didn't say how that's enforced. Yeah. So, in many cases.
With violence, right? Like, clearly, when you are talking about property rights, that implies a certain level of violence that maintains the property. Yeah, like, you have a monopolization of violence, exactly. AKA the state.
Monarchies or authoritarian regimes provide more freedom and property rights than democracies. And democracy...
No... That was incoherent as fuck. And no. No. He's so crazy, dog.
Democracies supercharge the character of whatever people they're in. So of the top 1% of societies.
Oh boy, are we getting racist eugenicist Rudyard today? Is that what we're getting? Are we getting some sacred bloodline talk?
They are predominantly among the top 1%. They're predominantly democracies. That includes Athens, Rome, America, the Netherlands, and but democracies can also supercharge negative characteristics.
Yeah, they're not good because they're democracies. They're good because they were good. There were good societies.
Examples of democracies.
No, democracy is good. Like it doesn't mean that the state it's in becomes good solely on that principle. But democracies are inherently better than any of the other forms of a state government. Like that's. Like, if you believe in people being equal and having equal rights and, like, being able to, like, live together in, like, a degree of harmony where everyone has a degree of agency over society, then you need to believe in democracy. Because there's no way that is a compatible set of beliefs with an authoritarian who dictates to you what you must do and what your rights are.
Supercharging negative characteristics are the Latin sphere and the Middle East. France was better under a monarchy than it was under a democracy. So was Brazil. So was Greece.
I'm sorry, France was better under a monarchy than it was a democracy. Okay. These are some very broad and unfounded statements that he's making.
A bunch of lower trust societies. Same thing with in the Middle East, democracies have performed better. In the Middle East, democracies vote in the preferences of the majority group. So when America made Iraq a democracy, the majority Shia voted in to oppress the minority Sunni, and then they sided with America's rival Iran.
Yeah, but it's not just sure, but the issue is like...
Yeah, because sometimes democracies do bad things. We live in America, we should be familiar with that concept. It's just that if all things being equal, a democracy is a better vehicle for changing into a better society than a monarchy or any kind of authoritarian structure for obvious reasons, right? And like, this isn't an indictment on the eternal character of a certain group of people, because groups of people change. They adopt new ideas. They, have their ways and views challenged and improve upon them. Like, that's good. And the system that facilitates that the best is democracy, where everyone's rights are protected and that conversation can happen.
This is why when we look at democracies, there are different systems that work better, right? Like there are certain, like I'm sure you probably oppose like direct democracy, right? Like the Greeks did, because it doesn't work very well. It leads to a lot of tyranny, right? There's the tyranny of majority to be feared in democracy.
It's also slow.
I'm going to respond to your point
but democracies, the point of all these systems is to build counters to the major failings, right? In the case of a democracy, you have to be afraid of the majority, the tyranny of majority. And so you have to build into the system checks and balances to prevent against the tyranny of majority as much as possible.
You're appealing to wishy-washy concepts where if there's an external threat,
none of these concepts have been wishy-washy. They've been pretty straightforward.
You have to assess it for what it is based on context. And you pick the highest quality person to do the assessing of context. And the thing with John Rawls is it's not an...
Yeah, you have to find the highest quality person in society to make the tough calls. If we had to rank people based on their genetic merit, the highest ranking person in charge of it all.
Accurate depiction of the human condition to randomly pick what individual you would be, because that's not how this works. Individuals have their own genetics and groups have different...
Called it.
I am very proud of the mental horsepower you have.
He's about to start talking about the magic bloodline stuff, like the bloodline of justice, the bloodline of a nation. What nonsense is he on? This is incoherent. He's about to launch into how different groups shape their character by via genetics and mating, and so therefore you cannot have the idea of like, well, you could be born into any group, because obviously people make independent decisions about who they mate with, and those decisions dictate the character of the nation. Like, that's what he's about to argue. He's about to argue about the genetic character of nations, which is, I want to be very clear here, just some actual honest-to-God Nazi shit.
Different genetics, and people are rewarded for the choices they make. And so
that's not a refutation of Rawls. Rawls' hypothetical can engage with that.
People are rewarded for the genetic decisions they make via mating.
So you're
but you're saying that Rawls doesn't work.
Yeah, it's called an orgasm, Rudyard. You don't have to be weird about it.
Because there's no baked in genetics, but that's not the point of the hypothetical.
You need to let me finish the argument. Okay. So Rawls operates under an underlying Christian assumption that there's indeterminate souls that you shove into a population. That's not what happens. A population is made up of individuals with different traits that make choices. And so you can't say...
Did I call it, or did I fucking call it? Did I fucking call it?
Say, if I were to randomly pick a certain population, what would I be? Because there's nothing random. An individual is the aggregation of all of the choices that went through them. And so you can't say, if I were to be born in a blank society, because the society is informed by the contextual decisions of everyone involved up to that point. It strips context from the entire human condition.
So the point of the hypothetical is that you have no way of knowing. Like, if you were to stand on the verge of coming into creation and look at the entirety of the population of Earth, and you were told you are going to be any one of these billions of people, what kind of society would you seek to create in the world you are going into? That question being posed to you. You could be anyone. The idea being that an egalitarian society would protect the rights of everybody, would treat everybody equally, because that is ideally the kind of society you would want if you were entering into this arrangement without any way of predicting what person you would be. This isn't a difficult argument to wrap your head around. Exactly, but they are, like, Rudyard's just like, well, actually, it's impossible to have that degree of uncertainty because don't you see, the different groups of people all have context, and the context is they fucked. like it's so stupid. By the bloodline, do you mean like a type of blood quantum? So some folks, I realize, might be missing out on some degree of context here, but like about a year and a half ago, Whatifalthist had a mental breakdown wherein he just posted like a 12-hour long rant. And in that rant, he talked about being a messenger from God, being visited by Odin, trying to bring religion back to the world, and that he had been to the spirit world, both heaven and hell, and also that he was a proponent of essentially mystical bloodlines. The idea that he espoused in his video is that he comes from a bloodline dedicated to pursuing justice because his family has a history of cops being in policing. So he has that mystical quality of justice in him by virtue of his bloodline. And he talks about an awful lot of other stuff there. There's a place where I've covered it. He's tried to scrub the internet of it, but when he's talking about the genetic character of nations, that is 1000% what he's talking about. He thinks that identity forged via genetics is both material in the sense of your genetic makeup and spiritual in the sense of your spiritual entity. And so when he's talking about that particular context, it is almost on like a religious level that he believes in this. Oh, he's just legitimately insane. Why are they even humoring this person? Well, because he has a YouTube channel with almost, I think, over 700,000 subscribers. and is also very well connected. Like, he's part of a Gen Z incubator for far-right influencers, run by, I think, some far-right think tanks. And he's also on good terms with, like, the thinkers behind, you know, what are they called? Like the Liberty Cities. But he's connected with all these billionaires, the Peter Thiel types, the, network state types. Like, he's been on their shows. He talks with them. Yeah, the network state freaks. Exactly. We actually covered, I don't know if it's actually gone up on YouTube yet, but we covered his appearance on Balaji Srinivasan's show, who's the guy who literally wrote the book, The Network State. And so, he pals around with all these very powerful and influential guys, and he's been on the Tim Pool show a couple of times. So yes, he is incredibly insane. Also, he's got that billionaire backing. So, like, he exerts a lot more influence than even the number of subscribers on his YouTube channel would suggest, which is why I talk about him, because weirdly, he's made himself into a big deal in this circle. Elon Musk retweeted him not that long ago. Like, he's insane, but he spews the kind of insane, like, racist gibberish that the far right loves. So, like, they think of him as kind of like a pseudo-intellectual, you know? Well, I guess they don't think of him as a pseudo-intellectual. They think of him as an actual intellectual who justifies the far-right political project and the demonization of the left.
Saying trolley problems strip context because they, like, engage in hypotheticals.
Let's say, instead of saying Rawls, just make the argument of, just articulate the argument.
Sure, yeah. The veil of ignorance is this thought experiment in the way that trolley problems are thought experiments, which is designed to help you decide which principles you want in your society. So if you imagine a society where you can't know who you will be in that society, what are some of the principles you hope are there? Rule of law, right? And, like, fair treatment before justice would be one that we would all be for, because I don't ever want to be in the minority group that just gets treated poorly by the justice.
What a thankless task to have to describe this to these absolute cretins who are dedicated to not understanding this. Is this the guy from the alt history 3-hour videos? Yes. Where it takes me like 3 or 4 hours to get through like a 1-hour video of his? Yes. Just so dense.
System, because I happen to be in that minority group.
So how would you define society?
Exactly, Madbox. She said his name hoping you would know it better than she could explain right now. She said his name as a shorthand, hoping that you would understand. And everyone in the room is dedicated to not understanding her. It's so frustrating. It's so frustrating.
The way that we usually do. A collection of people with, like, somewhat unified cultural values, probably bordered by a nation state that like unifies together.
That's a great definition. I would argue that by that definition, which I agree with, there are several distinct societies that exist within the United States, and each and every one of these societies is willing to use violence and lawfare against those who would threaten their moral worldview.
Yes, states have a monopoly of violence and will use it to perpetuate themselves. Yes, states will do that. But what you are talking about here is not the same thing, right? Like, you're trying to say it's perfectly natural to persecute minorities within a state, and it's not. The only thing a state does and exists to do is to perpetuate itself. Oh, God.
What does this have to do with the veil of ignorance?
So you're saying in a society...
Yeah, like, no, this is unrelated.
Like, who would you want to be? What rules do you want? And I would say, yes, that works wonderfully in a collection of individuals with a shared moral worldview and probably a national border. But what happens...
No! The idea being you should build a state, if you must have one, to build a society, a world where you have a fair shake under the law and have equal rights and have equal footing compared to everyone else. It like, having a reliance on homogeneity is actually against the hypothetical. It's not difficult to understand. He entirely failed to understand the assignment. He really did.
When that society is up against another society overlapping on its territories with a completely different worldview.
Well, this is part of how you can engage in the veil of ignorance, is going, well, I don't know who I am in this society, but how do I want that society theoretically to engage in foreign policy? Well, one of them, I would say, is I want my government to protect me as a citizen of whatever this nation state is, because I don't want other nation states coming in, stomping me and killing me and taking my land.
This is more so like, an example that I'll use that's probably the least egregious would be open air fish markets in New York City.
What?
I think they're absolutely disgusting, and they shouldn't.
What? What?
The spirits like to convey the message that you should mentally see me as Gandalf.
We're being taken on a mental journey here, folks.
Be allowed
because they smell.
It's not just that; it's the rotting fish and flesh that sloughs off
the street,
and it's all over the street.
With a hose,
and then it's just rotting for days. And when you go to Lower East Side, it's just everywhere you go.
Go to Houston.
The people who live there, that's their society. They are largely Chinese and Southeast Asian. They don't care about open air fish markets. But the people of New York have started to move away because they don't like it. And this has created an entrenched enclave. Enclaves are bad, I believe, like
what?
Having a group of people that form their own subdivision, that have their own rules, is going to create animosity and violence, because you will create two distinct moral worldviews at odds with each other. Now, the reason I cite this example is because...
Tim, we live in the fucking United States. It's in the fucking name. What are you describing, if not states, inside the U.S. framework? I cannot with this man. Every state has its own legal codes. And, different states have different cultural norms. If what he was proposing was correct, the United States could not exist. But his example here is just like, no, it's... Open air fish markets, though. Fish stinky. It's both silly and deeply racist. This is why Tim Pool gets along with Rudyard, because Rudyard's just off in La La Land, but they could both agree on the racism,
Riverboat Jack is coming to town. All the viewers gather round. Twitch and YouTube is where she streams. All that content is bursting the seams. Politics, gaming, and plenty more. Her sense of fashion you'll adore. So grab your stuff and hop aboard. We're going straight to Jack's Discord. Riverboat Jack.